The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Are you ready to take a journey? Let's connect with the healers of the world. It's that time. It's time for the Language of Healing on W4WN Radio and Talk 4 TV. Now here's your host, Dr. Nicole Fortin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Language of Healing on W4WN.com. Today, so excited. And this feels so timely with the hustle and bustle of the holidays and, as it's here in the Northern Hemisphere, getting utmost darkness. And how do we create light and happiness, joy, deeper within us, that true joy and purpose and clarity. And today's all about, I love this, creating space to breathe. When we feel so rushed and, possibly this time we're trying to get things organized and wrap up the year. So where do we and how can we support ourselves in creating more of that room to breathe a little and help us get out of stuckness and that overwhelm cycle that might show up along the way? We have a wonderful guest with us today who's a Feng Shui and energy clearing expert with lots of training in her repertoire toolbox. Let's bring her on, Amara Hamilton. Thank you for joining us. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. Thank you for having me.
Yes, for sure. So Feng Shui, this is a great, people call it Feng Shui. Have you heard that one?
A lot of times, yes.
Yeah. And someone maybe practices Chinese medicine, it's funny when it's a learning language, you have to learn how to, the tonation is different and slightly different perspectives. It's like, oh, yeah, that could be pronounced a different way, just like we can create space a different way. Maybe there's another avenue we don't know yet. So you have lots of training. What else have you explored? Lots of things around energy clearing and work, right? And mastering our own presence and our own energy. And so what is something that, after 26 years of experience, plus you're like just living life individually, what is something that still surprises you today?
What still surprises me is how much we are affected by our environment, our level of, how much we can relax and how productive we can be, and how that energy can shift in a very short time when you put your attention and have awareness around what is going on. And like within seconds, you can have a different perspective on, something in your life, for sure.
Mm. Yeah, and that's reassuring because some things are really chronic, and we keep looping back and back, and it's like, oh, what's it going to take to shift that? Yeah. What else can you say about that? Like, we'll dive in maybe to some tips or what you do more around to open that up, but where's a place to start?
Yeah, so what's important to understand is that often we look at our environment and ourselves backwards. We make, particularly at this time of year, we plan for the next year and, we commit to something and say, okay, I want to do this, I want to change this, whatever. And then we all know that 3 weeks into January, it sort of all falls by the wayside. And for me, to a great part, not the whole part, but to a great part, it is determined by our environment if we succeed with our goal setting or not. Because the environment holds a particular pattern, a flavor that is unique for each home, for our office space, for each business. And so it holds that pattern. And so now we're in that pattern. We ourselves are interacting with that pattern. And so we show up in a particular way. So when we say, oh, I want to change my pattern, which is exercise more, do something different, and we come up against the old pattern in our environment, it will push us back over time into the pattern that it's used
Yeah.
to.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like an uphill battle to change yourself internally, to do new things when the environment hasn't shifted. So for me, the easiest way to, get through the New Year's resolutions and actually implement something new, and could be all kinds of things, could be health things, personal growth items. The easiest way to support ourselves is to change our environment and take out the patterns that somehow activate us or hold us in, so that we have a little bit more room, there's a little bit more space. It's sort of in neutral. And then when something is in neutral, then I can add my flavor in and create it, how I want it. And then we'll get into this new routine, whatever. And then over time, I want to clear it again so that I can keep growing and expanding.
Yeah, because it's an ongoing thing, right? Like, because we're constantly expanding, or, yeah, I mean, in the sense of creation, or like I know for myself, um, if I have to sit down and do some paperwork, I can't do it till like the house is tidy.
Yes.
It's like it can
Yeah.
like that gets so much of my attention. So that really resonates me with how the environment affects my productivity, or my mental state, or even how well I rest.
Yes.
If it's like,
Yes.
and I'm sure that clearing your space, or the environment, is more than just a cluttered pile of paper in the
Yes.
corner. But like that stuff, I can really see how that limits us a little bit.
Yeah, because we have like the energy it's like a signature, and it's unique for every space, because it's a combination of the environment. So in the environment, we have energetic patterns like fault lines and magnetic fields and underground water. It's just naturally there. Nothing we can really do about it. And not all of those things affect us necessarily. And then we have people energy. And so people have been in the space and they left an imprint, right? We just leave an imprint. And so particularly with places where, challenging things happened, or older homes, or places where a lot is going on, there's a lot of people energy there. So whatever the flavor is of that people energy is something that we tune into. For example, I know from, real estate friends, their houses where people divorce, right? They live there for a year or two, and then something happens.
Yeah.
And so the next person coming in already is attracted to that place because they already have a challenge in their relationship, and it sort of feels like good to them, right? But then they come to kind of a crucial place where they have to decide, am I following in the pattern, or am I changing it? But we're not aware. So most people will just follow, right? Or if you look at a business, great example are restaurants. We all know of restaurants that stay for 20 years, and then others that change over every year or two. So the first person who started a restaurant in that space, super keen, got all done, whatever. And then after a year or two, something happens and they go bankrupt. Then that flavor now is in there. So the next person coming in will be perhaps 90% sure they will make it happen. And then, something happens and they go down that route. And then all of a sudden it's like the next person attracted is more like 60% sure. But it's all underground, right? We're not aware of it. So these patterns in spaces influence a lot. And people, of course, the energy, the feeling that we have, all the feelings, is what creates the patterns. And then there's electromagnetic, which is like the third one, all the technology. So all of those three things together, like earth energy, people energy, and technology, give the space a personality. And so our personality is interacting with the personality of the space. And so kind of my job is to make sure that that is as smooth as possible.
So when you're working with someone or home or the homeowners, you're also taking into account their energy in some sense, like what's best for your energy, right? Or is
Yes.
that
So,
because it's like
yeah.
probably not textbook, like nothing really is, right? You can learn, feng shui, space clearing, and I think there are many like pathways to get there too,
Yes. There are
like
many
different
systems.
ideas, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And even if you look at something like Feng Shui, there's whatever. I think for well-known types of schools, there's probably 8 that, people know about. And the books all have different things. So it's can be very confusing. But if you stay in one system, like one system of Feng
Yeah.
Shui or versus another, then it's fine because you follow through on a particular path with a particular intention. So for me, Feng Shui is, I've adapted a little bit. I learned it with the perspective of coming from intention rather than kind of laying down the law and this is how it has to be, because our Western culture is not, we don't live that way. And
Yeah.
we always want to know, why are you doing this? What is going on here, right? But Asian cultures are more like, let the master come in and this is what you do. So there has to be this discernment. And so I like to kind of pick and choose items that will help you become more focused and literally able to do the things that you want to do in that space. In your
Yeah.
bedroom, you want to sleep. At your desk, in your office, you want to work, right? And so the question is, you want to come into your house. Are you actually welcome into your house? Right? A lot of people, like a door is like a gateway, right? We kind of anticipate what's happening when we go through the door. And so there's energetic layers that happen usually at the entrance, and you step into the door, and does the space say, hey, come on in, this is your home, it's awesome. And so often I find people stand by the door, and if I tell them to, go inside and imagine if they're welcome or not, half the time they feel, I don't know, I don't really feel like I want to come in. And that is crazy. It's your home.
Yeah.
Right? So
we don't even, like, how many of us even consider that?
Exactly, right? It's like one of those things. And it's the same, like, how do you feel when you're in your bed? How do you feel when you're at your desk? Do you get stuff done, or are you all over? And half the time, it's not because of how we are in our personality. Yes, there's contributions there for sure. But often it is because we're not sitting in the right place, not in the right location, in the whole home. There's something going on in the bedroom, and we're totally unaware. But when we stop and slow down and actually notice, we become aware. So we can use ourselves sort of as an antenna and go to different places and say, okay, how am I feeling here? Can I actually do what I'm intending to do? Can I go and imagine my work? Can I close my eyes when I'm lying on my bed and feel like, okay, I'm just going to drift off, instead of, 20,000 ideas going through my head, or tightness in my chest, or some other thing going on.
One thing I remember from you about, let's just go with the office space, because many people have, an office room, right? And
Yes.
put the desk against the wall, and it's because it's it's a bit maybe tucked out of the way, and you get space in the middle. But then when you're at the desk, you're facing the wall, your back is to the window or to the door. And yeah, I'd never really considered, oh, like maybe flip it around the other way. So you have a view of the whole room. So then there's a bit more space between the desk and the wall, but you can get, I don't know if it's the case for every room. I guess it's case by case, but to me that makes a huge difference when I'm sitting somewhere where I have a bigger view.
Yes.
And maybe I would think, oh, that would be distracting to see all of that, but it actually creates space to breathe and feel comfortable. And maybe that's the safety point. It's like you can see your surrounding and you're not kind of wondering what's behind me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a Feng Shui principle of,
Okay.
they call it the comfortable armchair position, where you are sitting in like an armchair also has a back, right? So something has your back. And so you have a different feeling of safety, because when you are sitting somewhere and the door's behind you, for example, your fight flight part of the brain is getting activated, because that system is constantly checking, am I safe? Am I safe? Is anything going on? Is anybody coming in? Like, even if you know you're alone in that space. So that's just a thing you can't turn off. So what then can you do to calm this down? So when you're further back in a room and you're looking into the room, kind of, you can see the door, the system will relax because you're in charge. You know what's going on. Somebody coming in the door? No, nothing. It's all easy. And then it means you have more brain capacity left, literally, to focus on your work. And this is true for most people. Not everybody. Some people have really, really strong intention setting. And so if they sit down at the desk, that they can do it. Doesn't matter where the desk is, or if they're on the airplane, or, they're sitting somewhere and it's noisy. But for most people, when you do something that, takes a little bit of thinking and focus, it's easier to be in a place where you feel there's room in front of you. Mm-hmm. And we usually, with any kind of, particularly in an office, a lot of people like to be practical and kind of logical. Oh yeah, this is all kind of lined up all around the outside. And oh, I have a view out the window. But the question is, do you want to sit there and look out the window and wish you were outside, or do you want to be focused, get your work done, and go outside? Right? Like that is kind of the difference. So it's not so much that, like, when I sit down, I just want to get my work done, really, and then have more time and freedom to do and be outside or do other things. So, but often, and the way furniture is often laid out when you go to a store to buy it, it's sort of for all against the wall and being in some way practical, but it's not necessarily supportive. Like all the little cubby holes, right, that became so fashionable, big office space, and then you just get your little cubicle in there. It's the worst possible scenario to have a productive team. Mm-hmm. So
interesting.
And there are things you can work with, but it's the worst possible setup. And, it's just interesting to observe.
Well, how many businesses are running like that, right?
Yes.
Or, you know what? I was just kind of reminded of when I was doing a lot of study, my study days, exams.
Yes.
I loved being at like a restaurant, like a Denny's or a coffee house, or, being tucked away in the corner, see everything, but there's a busyness. I don't know, maybe that's kind of interesting. I felt like I focused better in something like that, but maybe that's just a personality thing.
Yeah, it's a matter of both. But if you're in the back corner, and you see everything, the fight flight is not going on. But it's like some people feel like they can learn better when they listen to music, or so there's individual differences. But if you sit at the back, like if you think about a boardroom, right, there's a reason why the head of the board sits at the end and has everybody in front of it. And when you actually look at the most layouts of boardrooms, the head is the person who's sitting furthest back in the room and sees the door, kind of over there. And so it means they hold everybody. They're in charge and they hold everybody. So that is kind of the thing. And then you can have sort of a power thing down. So the person, if the door is on the, let's say on the left, then the person who's sitting on his right side would be second in command because they have the next biggest view. Right? The people who are down on the side who have their back to the door feel less powerful in that context. And so we have, inherently, often people will set themselves up correctly. But, we also have recognized structures like a boardroom setup where people, or you go into an office like the bank person, right? Or somebody who has they sit, look at the door, there's a desk there and you sit in front of the desk, right? So you immediately feel a little smaller because they hold the whole space for that whole room. And so then they direct the conversation and everything, right? It's very different if you would sit just across from each other.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's the idea of like the round table too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe these are different for different purposes, possibly. I notice this about studying Asian or Eastern medicine and just the cultures there that is inherently in in the way of life, this hierarchy. There's the emperor, and then there's the emperor's guard, and then there's the general and the ministers. They kind of they're not important, but they hold less power, and that's like a big structure. I'm curious to know what your definition of feng shui is. Do you know, like, what is the I don't know, the key principle around that?
So for me, the key principle is kind of a gentle redirection of energy into creating flow without pushing, right? It's all about kind of a natural nature based flow, because feng shui originated in observing nature. They were observing people who lived on the north side of like in China in particular. Other countries also created feng shui, but in China you have rivers that go east-west and you have rivers that go south-north, the big ones. And so they were just studying, observing how people's lives were when they lived on the north side or the south side, on the east side and the west side. And so they derived a lot of different observations from that. And so some feng shui is based on directions, but other one, there's different kinds of feng shui. But the idea is really to be in harmony with nature and create a flow. So if I say, I'm sitting in my comfortable armchair and I want to have this view, it came because people who had a mountain or, a high hill behind them and their house was in front of them and they were facing out and they had the support of the mountain behind them, were doing better than people facing the opposite.
Right.
And so they were just observing and noticing if there were literally trends and then translated that into recommendations. And so the idea is to, how do I get unstuck? How do I put myself back in the flow? Because if I think about myself as a river, right, and I'm flowing through my life, then it's much easier when I keep flowing than when I get caught in an eddy, which is meaning stuck, right? Or I jump out of the river and I'm sitting on the sidelines and just
not going anywhere,
right? Or I'm with my back and I'm looking back and I'm drifting down and all of a sudden there's an obstacle there that I didn't see, right? Or there's tributaries coming into any stream or river and they bring new information, whatever. Am I willing to see that? And, what can I take from that? What who do I travel with down? When do I let go? So the river holds a lot of meaning, really. And so this idea of how can I move myself back into flow, even though perhaps I feel some kind of contraction in my life, right, in my own inner life. But how can I move myself back into this feeling of flow? Because life is easier. We all know the stop and go, how hard it is to get going when we've stopped, right? It's a principle of physics, right? We need more energy to get something moving. But when something moves, like a train, right, it needs very little energy to go actually across the tracks. But to get it going takes a lot. And so it takes our life force. And so we want to basically keep as much life force as we can, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And make it easier for us.
Yeah, that makes sense then. Why clearing your space, like the clutter around, or like just putting the dishes away, or, tidying up, whatever. Then when you sit down to do the work, it takes less energy or less effort.
Yes, if you're sitting in the right place and you don't have to work against something, like, for example, your busy brain, or, their energetic patterns that are stress patterns. For example, a fault line in a physical space that we don't really know about, right? Like when we're buying a house or we're going into some place, we're not checking the earth map to see if there's a fault line there.
Yeah. Maybe you are.
Yeah, my body will, because
I
learned to check that.
Yeah.
And so there's a feeling associated with that. But if you don't know it, in a way, you're at the mercy of it. Right. And so a stress line, a fault line is called a stress line because the earth is moving in two different directions, right, at that place. And so we're not just having the big lines that we know, like in California and along the whole west coast of North America, and of course other places, but the big fault lines create smaller ones, right? And they sort of come off in right angles and then they divide. It's like the energy sort of distributing itself, so it's not all sitting in one place.
Yeah, like a leaf.
And so we have fault lines everywhere, right? And it doesn't matter. I mean, I've been to many different places and it's quite astounding. Even if nobody says, oh, there are fault lines here, you wouldn't expect they can still be there. So this fault line activity creates stress. And so when we all have our own kind of unique experience of stress. So some people start to get confused. Some people just go like, oh, whatever, I'm feeling exhausted, or I'm feeling unstable, or whatever. So when I put somebody on a fault line, they will say something usually. When I say, what are you aware of? They may say something. And then I know, okay, this is their stress pattern. And everybody in the family could have a different stress pattern. But if it is somewhere in the house where they have to go and cross it all the time, like goes to the middle of the house or the staircase if there's an up or down, or in front of the kitchen or whatever, right? Like it usually goes like a straight line through space. Then I may go through that stress line 50 times a day.
Yeah.
And 50 times a day, my system registers it and says, oh my God, I feel so unstable. Oh my God, I feel so unstable. And then it's like you go through and then you have to regroup for a second. So that has a cost, right? To do this many, many times. And we're not aware that that is going on. And so that can be worked with and brought into more, a more neutral place so that you could leave that whole stress pattern out of your life.
Yeah, wow, amazing. What a difference that would make for so many, I just even imagine, the pacers of the world.
Yes.
Imagine you're pacing, thinking, clearing your head, but every time you're crossing, that's a possibility.
Yes.
It's actually just depleting more and more. And it is about preserving our life force, because I think this is what, provides us longevity and good health and living. And
exactly.
It's like part of our constitution, what we're brought in with, and it can be difficult to top that up. So living in a nice environment that creates the space and the clarity is like makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is you talk about nature and whatever is what I've learned through, some different experience in different countries and different environments is that out in nature, all of these things are not as intense, right? So I remember going to a place where they had a huge battle 500 years ago in Europe. And it was, we were all kind of thinking, oh my God, this is going to be like, whoa. And it was really quiet and we could get the flavor of everything, whatever. And then we went into the church of that local area and you can sort of energetically put yourself into that time. And it was so intense. It was like, I need to get out of here type of thing, because it was a physical space, or the town that was next to this battlefield, right? Like the intensity there, because it's a confined space, people then react all together and it just makes it worse. But when you go out in nature, there may have been all these imprints, but it gets sort of modified and softened. And so you don't have this kind of, push or this experience of whatever is going on that you could have in a house, right? Because the layering is very different.
Yeah. So what does nature do kind of better than humans that want to construct walls?
No stories.
Yeah, that's
No
yes.
stories, right?
Yeah, because
when
those can be quite limiting.
Yeah, it's the stories that hold most of us back, right? Where we feel something, right? And if I don't know what is going on, so let's say I have this feeling when I go into my home that it's not really welcoming me, right? So, but I push through because it's my home and I live there and okay, I'm going to make dinner and whatever's going on. But every time I go, it's this feeling. So I may feel a little separate or a little lonely or a little like I don't belong or that. And then my head starts coming, says, oh, you're feeling like you're not belonging. Oh, you're lonely. Oh, yeah, look at that. Look, really, nobody's reaching out to you. Or you only have 2 friends. Or, right? Like the mind then is starting, oh, and you've always only had 2 friends. Or, they've always, like you thought you belong and then people did something and you don't. Like the mind will just go on. You have one story, it'll pull another story, which is, of course, very different in nature. And I think that's why we're relaxing in nature and it's healing to us and it's invigorating us because there's less story. We're not constantly reminded of something that didn't go well, right? Because the focus is on something different and we're not stepping into highly charged, potent, energetic fields where a lot of emotion has been created.
Right. Well, now I'm just thinking about Feng Shui and it means, Feng is the wind, right? And Shui, the water.
Yeah.
And those elements, wind and water, will transform anything, it will change landscapes.
Yes.
It will, like the ocean over the sand, it will clear it.
Yes.
The wind will, or the trees will grow and it's so clever.
Yeah, and we have to allow it.
Yeah.
Right? Being in the house, we're not allowing.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So
well, because we kind of close those elements off, or
Yes.
we close any possibility of something coming into cleanse, and maybe it is part of our limiting beliefs. Maybe it's the space, the confines of the walls. I think this is a really important topic right now because of the intention setting of this time of year, and it's quite fascinating to me how we will set these intentions, and then like 3 weeks later, you say we're kind of we haven't ingrained that new
Exactly.
channel.
Yeah.
And these are all elements that are at play, or what holds us back.
Yeah.
Oh.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so awareness alone is very helpful, right? Is to go and sit or lie down or stand somewhere. I think my greatest, insight when I was learning all this and why I just was so fascinated by it was that I could stand over here in a room and then I could go to the other corner and I would feel differently in each space. And I didn't have time, like a second in between. I didn't have time to come up with a story or any particular thing. It was just, oh, this is how I feel when I stand here, and this is how I feel when I stand here. So what is creating that? Right? Like what is going on? Because usually when I feel something, I go and figure out, oh, it's because of this.
Right.
Right? My story.
We want the story.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
We're just so conditioned to it.
Yeah.
But if I say, well, that's not true. I'm just feeling this. I feel right here, I feel a little irritated. And here I feel, oh, this is a little calmer and more spacious. Good. So that's it. That's all. It doesn't mean anything. And so that is very freeing. Because then when you feel something is moving, you can more easily acknowledge, oh, I'm feeling this. And you don't want to stuff it. You want to acknowledge that you're feeling it. But you don't have to explain it or fix it or whatever. And if I allow that, then it's like wind and water, right? It'll just keep moving and I'm moving into the next feeling. And I move into the next feeling. Like children, babies, when they're 6-8 months old, I would call it baby TV. And you hold them kind of, and you look at them, all the emotions would float through their face and you see everything. And I would be amazed. God, they look angry. That is hate. Whatever. Like you just see every emotion go through. But because there's no story, it moves through and there's no stopping. Right? The story stops it and then we get attached to it and we do our thing and then you may get depressed or sad or super angry because we're stuck in that. But if I can just be with it and allow it, it will move. And so we talked a little bit about life force. It will just preserve that because I'm in flow. Everything is a wave, right, in life.
Right.
Like Chinese medicine, right? Everything is.
Yeah, well, that's like the Taoist principle, which I think is what Feng Shui is based on, the observation of nature. And because and then Chinese medicine, it's our internal environment meeting the external environment. And
Yes.
the whole purpose and point is to live in accordance with the nature,
Exactly.
live in the flow, like change with the seasons, with the years, your life stage phase. When we resist that is where we get problems, where we stop the flow. And then we create the story stuck. Now we're not, continuing on the cycle.
Exactly.
So maybe that's one thing to take away for our listeners today, that, if you don't have an expert such as yourself in their home or their space, it starts with the awareness. Find rooms where you do notice that you feel maybe more open and relaxed, and some that are more stressed, and don't just let that kind of move through you.
Yeah. And sometimes like a fun thing is to play detective and notice, where do you not go? Like if you sit on a sofa, where are you sitting?
Yeah.
Are you always sitting in the same place? And do you never go to the other side?
Right.
Or a room. Are there rooms that you avoid? Like that, it's just, or you sit around the dining room table. Where do you go? And then just try sitting somewhere else and notice what happens there. That's a quick and fun way to just become more aware, because we're so habitual and we don't know that we're evading. Sometimes we're avoiding, like unknowingly, our body is trying to find the best place and we're avoiding the spaces. So just see if you're actually using your whole space, or if they're, if you feel like, I better sit over here, or I better sit over here, and you don't know. And then sit there and notice how that is different than sitting where you usually are.
Mm-hmm. And then how could you bring more of that, let's say, the feel-goodness
So you notice what is going on, and so that is the first level of awareness. So when I have awareness, then I can do something with it. So of course you can, bring somebody in who does energy clearing or feng shui. But for yourself, you could even see, okay, if I'm intentionally creating, like some people like to use sage or whatever. For me, it's a short thing, but it's like cleaning the house and then you have to do it again type thing. But you could try that out and see, does it feel different? Because when you use the intention, right, we can make all things happen. In feng shui, often, because it's, very Chinese culture based, some people will use all kinds of Chinese type artwork or whatever to do the feng shui, but it doesn't really matter. I could take a water glass and put it there and say the intention, I'm putting it there so it reminds me that this is what I want. Right? I can have a full glass of water and do a money thing with it and say, my bank account is just this full all the time, whatever. Right? But it's the intention more so than if I put something somewhere, it's the intention behind it. So you could just notice how you feel and become more aware of what happens inside of you. So what stories get activated, right? And so you just become more open. Instead of having a smaller point of view, perhaps you can see something from a wider perspective.
Right.
And that starts to move. Yeah. And that starts to move the energy. Oh, yeah. It doesn't feel so good. Okay. Now at least I know. Yeah. Or it reminds me of this thing. I start to think about this thing. So of course I don't want to sit there.
Right.
Right. And so then you can work on it from two sides, so to speak, on yourself and on the space to start shifting.
Yeah. One of my great mentors, Kate Michaels, she would always say, had this principle of like awareness with acceptance creates the awakening.
Yes.
So yes, awareness is a first step and is super important when we're setting intentions.
Yes.
Because I think what also stops us from following through or really having those New Year's resolutions stick is that our intention doesn't align fully with, our like like our energetic pattern or something where we're up against something that's like an invisible force.
Yes. Yeah.
But so that invisible force could be what drives miracles. It can either go ahead. You were adding something there.
Yeah. So the intention, your internal intention is usually set because you want to shift something, right? You want to get better at this or do this differently to benefit yourself because you're feeling some kind of lack or it's, not enough of something or you want to get stronger or whatever it is. And so you're trying to change something internally, but the environment just says, well, not happening because we're set in this pattern, right? And so sometimes to make these inner changes, it's easier to start making the outer changes in your environment. And then all of a sudden there's more room. There's more room to
totally relate to that.
Expand into your intention. And it doesn't have to be a challenging thing.
Yeah. I like that practice of just going around the rooms and like a detective, curious with a curious mind.
Exactly.
With no attached, story or decisions on how it is, just feeling that and how much space, even if you did nothing other than observe.
Exactly.
That's the only, and then how much space that could really create. It's like, business is slow. Let me just touch all the files that of everyone I've ever worked with, right? Or, it's sometimes even that awakens, like,
yes, because you're all of a sudden aware and you're present. And so you may look at the files and touch the files and all of a sudden you think, oh, so-and-so, right? Let me talk to that person.
Yeah.
I mean, you only get that input when there is space. When the story takes up your head, there's no intuition, right? There's no room for a new perspective or a little download or whatever. The miracles for me are created when I'm in flow and
Yeah,
I have no
absolutely.
expectation of anything. But I also know that my intention, right? I'm looking here, the intention setting actually starts to shift my focus, because now I see more in that arena, whatever my intention was. And if my mind is busy, I will not see what's coming in terms of info, right? But if
Right.
if there's space, and I'm saying, let's say I want to find the perfect exercise program for me for the next 5 months, good. But it could be floating right by, literally, on my scrolling or my whatever, but I'm not seeing it. But the intention is setting a focus for my awareness, right? And then if I have this focus, that's my new lens that I'm going to look through, and I will notice more in that arena, more
Yeah.
information.
Like a new car that you get, and then suddenly you see that everywhere.
Yes.
Like, oh, I never
Yeah.
saw those on the road before.
Yeah.
Now.
Or you just or somebody talks about something, right, at work, or one of your friends mentions something, whatever,
yeah.
and it comes totally. It's like, why would you talk about that? And all of a sudden it's the thing. That's how I got into Feng Shui. So
Really, yeah.
somebody in my environment talked about it, and I didn't know what it was, and then I said, oh, I should know what that is, and then all
Yeah.
these things happened of how I could actually learn it. So,
And this was also after you had that curiosity around, oh, like feeling different energy, like feeling different in different spaces. You're like, oh, what's behind this?
yeah, no, I actually, somebody talked about it and I didn't know it, and then I took a course, and then I learned space clearing, like a little bit of whatever different things, and it was like, okay, this is really changing my whole way of how I'm looking at life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It gets you out of this victim mode, right? That actually it could be true that there's something going on. I mean, we all know, we go into, particularly when we're house hunting, apartment hunting, whatever, and we go into all these spaces, and some you can go through the front door and you go like, oh God, I don't have to go in there. I don't want to be here, right? And other places like, oh, this is amazing. We have a resonance, and thank God we all have a different one, so that all the different places
yeah, exactly,
get looked after, right? But
yeah,
but this kind of trusting and going into spaces with intention, and even if you're out in nature, right? What feels good? What happens when you stand beside the river or a pond, or beside the ocean? What happens when you are with a little tree or a big tree? Like, just to notice, right? Or you stand somewhere still and you look around, and what am I drawn to look at? This,
maybe
to
it's
take
just
a
more
moment. Yeah.
more observation. We need that more observation, like open receptivity of the moment. How often are we just living in that story?
Yeah.
Or the reprogrammed. Okay, Mara, share with us how people can find you, and because you can work remotely.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
We
like
can
in
do
many.
it any which way. I can work
Yeah.
remotely with the floor plan, and like a Zoom conversation, and we can of course work in person, and it doesn't matter if it's an office space, a business, a home, any kind of home. And so you can reach me at amara.ca, and there's a connect form there that you can fill out and let me know.
Yeah, and this is
it's
good
a super fun adventure, really, to just.
Oh yeah.
I find it very empowering for people, and it's fun, and there are a lot of insights just for life in general that you can receive, of how you're living your life, and how you can, in a way, the most easiest way, without needing to analyze a lot of things or go through deep personal work, you can take a good step into a direction that you want to.
Absolutely. Yes, and your energy and your expertise are so valuable, and I strongly urge anyone interested who resonates with this to reach out to you to have that awareness or that space created for themselves, because you'll always discover so much more, and it is fun along the way indeed.
Yeah.
Ah,
Thank you,
unfortunately, our
Nicole.
time is up. I know. Thank you so much. It was so much fun, and yeah, I look forward to breathing in beautiful spaces through the ages, strong
Yes.
vitalities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep everything spacious and in flow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Yeah,
Really
thank
enjoyed
you, Amara.
being with
We'll
you.
talk soon. Yes. And tune in next week on the language of healing for more inspiration. And we'll see you then. Thanks.
Wow, what a show today. And the journey does not stop here. Come travel the world with Nicole every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time as together we become more fluent in the language of healing on W4WN Radio and Talk4 TV. See you next week.